Revenge of the Animals really kind of re-energized me, and I was ready to dive into another film like right after that. And it was actually at the first screening of Revenge of the Animals at the projector at my house. The conversation came up of what am I going to do next? And you know, Rebecca Howland, remembering all the special effects I did in the Cartoon Man movies, said, you should do a space movie. That'd be really cool. And my first reaction was, yeah, I could do a space movie if it was the Cartoon Man in space, because the special effects I was capable of doing were largely 2D cartoony stuff. But then the next morning, you know, as it was sinking in that Revenge of the Animals was at the end of its life cycle, barring whatever might happen with festivals, I started to think about what I might do if I did a space movie. You know, I kind of had ideas for a live-action Buzz Lightyear movie floating around in my head for years, and well, so needless to say, 24 hours after she made that comment that I should do a space movie, I had most of the core elements of what would become Space People figured out.
Turn right at asteroid. Recalculating.
Why does he keep saying that?
Apparently you're making turns at the wrong asteroids.
Well, how am I supposed to know what he means? They all look the same.
Recalculating.
So Space People was by far the biggest thing I'd done up to that point. I knew, even writing the script, that it was going to take the entire year 2015 to get done. It basically amounted to taking the large-scale, bigger cast in multiple locations of Revenge of the Animals, combining that with the cheesy special effects of the Cartoon Man movies, and making something out of this world. Sorry. So I was really happy with the script I wrote for Space People, but right off the bat I was just like, how am I gonna do any of this? How do I even do a scene set in a spaceship? What do I just shoot it in my garage and put aluminum foil up everywhere? The answer was yes. I actually, about a month before we started production on Space People, I took a trip to Washington, D.C., and I was at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, and I found it amusing that a lot of the real NASA spacecrafts just looked like they were just covered in aluminum foil. They didn't look sleek and Star Trek-like. They looked more like something from Space People. That made me feel a little bit better about the aesthetic that I had. It was a film where, going into it, I knew that the effects were going to be silly looking. They were going to be cheesy. So I just went all in and embraced the aesthetic. It's like our spaceship looks like this, but it's still a real space adventure.
I remember, like, watching him do Space People, and, like, he has his own way of doing things. But you know what? He gets the job done, and his writing is amazing.
It was so much fun, just sitting in a chair, wearing a spacesuit and just yelling about the asteroid field or firing the neutron torpedoes and taking us to photon speed. And as I'm saying this, I'm doing the character voice, and I don't even know if I mean to.
Right now, we need to make contact with the conglomeration as soon as possible. My arch-nemesis, Lady Gravitox, has captured Princess Altima, the president's daughter. And if we don't act soon, the entire galaxy could be at her mercy.
Should probably talk about Lady Gravitox.
If it isn't the one and only Captain Vic Tempest.
Lady Gravitox! I first cast Hannah Heckman McKenna in Revenge of the Animals in a fairly small role. She was the first one to die. But while I was in pre-production on Space People, I helped out with a film that she wrote and directed herself, where she played kind of an unhinged, psychotic character. At one point, she saran-wrapped a young man to a bed and seemed to really enjoy herself while doing it. And as I watched her play that scene, I was like, yeah, she has to be the villain in this space movie. And I sent her a description of the character, and she was right away like, oh my god, yes! That's the character I've always wanted to play. And then I sent her a really vague description of what Lady Gravitox looked like, and she did some latex modeling at the time, so she brought in her friend Ribbon Girl Hart to do all kinds of crazy makeup on her. She brought in these elaborate outfits. It was so far beyond anything I even imagined would have been possible. It's like her costumes made everyone else's look bad, just the cheap robot costumes with These badges look okay. I made these myself. And as if all the spaceships and supervillains and costumes and whatnot weren't enough, I thought, wouldn't it be a great idea if, for a couple days during Space People, we go film in the middle of Boston? I had actually at one point wanted to shoot the final battle of Journey of the Cartoon Man on the Boston Common, but I decided against doing that. But actually, it was as Revenge of the Animals was winding down, and I was thinking ahead to future projects before I even had the sci-fi idea. I thought, it would be fun to shoot something in Boston, because I was getting tired of just shooting things at my house and in the woods, and I knew my way around Boston because I went to college there, and so when I started developing Space People, it was like, wouldn't it be cool if we just have all these ridiculous costumes on and we're just like walking around Boston? So yeah, we did that. We put on the spacesuits and we rocked around Boston a couple of times. The first time it was weird because there were actually a lot of other people in costume walking around Boston. Like there was some kind of Disney character convention or something, and some kind of fashion show near the State House with these really like avant-garde body paint and all kinds of stuff, and we'd have people coming up to us asking, like, what's the deal with all you in the costumes? We're like, well, we're making this sci-fi movie, Space People, but we're not with them. We don't know what they're doing. It was what you'd expect. We had a lot of people taking pictures with us. A lot of people who thought they were hilarious, making jokes about illegal aliens, asking us what planet we're from. All that. It was just one of those things where it was just like, I can't believe we're doing this. I can't believe I got a couple dozen people to follow me into this crazy adventure. And people ask me, how do you get all these people in your movies? Well, it started out with the small group and then kept inviting people back, and some of them came back, brought in some new people. The group got bigger and bigger. I mean, it's even probably doubled in size since we did Space People.
I met Adam on the set of Paragods, and he said he was a filmmaker and that he was going to be doing a few upcoming movies, and I said, hey, I'm in. Like, if you can find a part for me, I'd love to be involved. And so he wrote Space People and cast me as Cosmic Ray, and that was a lot of fun. It was the first project I worked on, and I came into a team of people who had already worked together, so I think I was kind of one of the new guys on the team.
I started as President Leah Smoot. That was an interesting role to play. I was also the mother of a teenage daughter in that, who had an independent streak.
And then there's Commander Zebulon. I had an actor cast as the commander of the Space Squad, but he had to back out pretty early on, and I didn't replace him immediately because most of the character's parts were just him talking to us on a screen, so he didn't need to be on set with other actors. It just wasn't a pressing issue. And around the end of August of that year, my second cousin from Ohio came to visit, which he has done once or twice a year for most of my life. And he's the sort of person who, if he finds out you're filming a movie, he's gonna be like, oh, do you have a part for me in the movie? And it just so happened that in that case, we did. So, my second cousin, David Kelly, wound up playing Commander Zebulon. He really wanted to do his part with a bucket of chicken, and we actually filmed all of his lines with him eating the chicken. That's something I have on video, even though I never really intended to use it. Altogether, Space People took about 5 months to put together, from the start of production to the end of post-production, which maybe doesn't sound like a lot, but I was working on it every single day, 7 days a week, continuously, from June to November. And, the production of it took about a month longer because we had to reschedule a lot of stuff, like always, but I don't think that even affected post-production much because there were just so many special effects and stuff to do. It was gonna get done in November no matter what. So Revenge of the Animals had got into one small festival, but for Space People I was really hoping for something more. And I found out there was a Boston Science Fiction Film Festival, so it just seemed like a no-brainer. Sent Space People to that, and Space People got into the first festival I submitted it to, and at the time that was like the most exciting thing ever. I had this vision in my head of like everyone on the cast coming and this huge showing in a theater, and then they scheduled it on a Monday night. And then it snowed. So it ended up not being the huge event I was hoping for. I mean, a bunch of people in my family managed to make it. Aurora made it, but it was kind of a letdown that it happened on that night when I just had so many people saying, oh, hey, I really wanted to come, but the road conditions are really bad and I can't make it. But there were a lot of people in the audience who were just random people who had festival passes, who, you know, were just watching all the films in the sci-fi festival. And, you know, these were people who didn't know me, didn't know anyone involved in the film, and once they got into the groove of it and figured out what kind of movie this was, these people were laughing at everything. It's just all the silly special effects, everything Colin would say is iPal.
I will tell you what I know after this advertisement.
Lady Gravitox being evil and the whole thing with the mannequin. It was just, from start to finish, it was just everything would get a laugh. And I mean, I honestly think everyone in Space People has at least a moment that always gets a big laugh. And so even though the experience of that festival overall was kind of disappointing, those 104 minutes that the film was playing on that big screen with booming sound, with a bunch of random people laughing at everything, that was still one of my most memorable experiences. And it was validating, because sometimes it feels like the only people who watch and the only people who care about these movies are my family and the actors who are in them and their friends and family. So to just see total strangers enjoying it and then having good things to say afterward, it was like, okay, I think I am good at this. And so after that, I continued submitting Space People to festivals, and we just got into more and more. There was one in Miami, I believe. There was the Kapow Film Festival, the Kapow Intergalactic Film Festival in Southern California. That was a new festival that year. I sent them Space People, and they've ended up showing 4 of my films over the years. And then there was the Boston Comic-Con Film Festival. That was an amazing experience. Hannah and I went dressed as Captain Tempest and Lady Gravitox, and Jonathan, I don't know, maybe that's what Rolando Sinclair dresses like when he's off duty. It was just huge event at a convention center, all these people, huge celebrities in attendance, and I mean, yeah, the film festival aspect of it was kind of a small afterthought in the side room, but still, just this whole thing buzzing around, and I'm in this room watching this crazy movie that I made. At one point, this guy was trying to, make his way into the room where they were showing the films. He's just like, is this Space People? Is this Space People? And Hannah and I look at each other, we're like, do you know who that guy is? I don't know who that guy is, but somehow he knows about our movie.
I didn't even know Adam had Space People showing at Boston Comic-Con, and a friend of mine who was attending the conference, didn't even know I was in movies, called me or texted me and said, I just walked into a room in Boston Comic-Con and there was a movie playing and you were in it. and he was like, I couldn't believe it. So he sat down and ended up watching the whole movie, and we had a good laugh about that one.
That was a high point. Showing Space People at Boston Comic-Con. And again, experiencing it with a crowd of people who just laughed at everything. It was really gratifying, because, at this point, smoking bottle entertainment had been a thing for 4 years, and the first few, it was like, hey, Cartoon Man's on YouTube, please, someone watch it. And to have even small-scale success with Space People was really exciting.
If I was to pick my favorite movie he's ever done, I would have to say Space People.
And so, Space People was like the high point of everything up to that point. So, how do you top that? Well, I started to think of ideas for a sequel to Space People almost as soon as we started shooting it. And I can distinctly remember the day I finished it. In the morning, I sent off an email to everyone in the cast saying, hey everybody, Space People's done. Let's try and set up a date for a screening. By that afternoon, my brain was just plotting out the story to the second one, and I'm just like, no, you finished Space People. Don't think about a sequel now, just enjoy the fact that it's done, because if there's a sequel, then it's not done. But especially once the first one started getting into festivals, it was like, okay, there's interest in this. Here's Space People 2. And I mean, Space People 2 was, just as much fun as the first one. And I think what made it even more exciting was around the time of the Space People movies, I was working on a lot of other projects with a lot of the same people. Back when I was doing like the Cartoon Man and Suburban Spies, I was almost exclusively doing my own films, but by the time of Space People, I'd got involved with Paragods. Paragods was a web series about EMTs and firefighters in New Hampshire that I got involved with around the, season 2, season 3. It ended up running for 5 seasons, and over the course of it, a lot of people in the New England film and acting community were involved with it. I met a lot of people on that series.
First time I ever met Adam was on the set of Paragods. I think he was there to help, and then he filled in for a role. We asked him back again for the 3rd season of Paragods, and again, he was just amazing at what he did, and we just plugged him in and went from there.
Yeah, Adam Griswold. Adam came in, I think, during one of the mid-seasons of Paragods. I think it was season 3, and he just had this amazing ability to be like this completely overwhelmed, like straight edge, straight arrow leader type.
After I saw Space People, I'm like, yeah, this guy needs to come here and be on Paragods. And I told him this is what I want him to play, which was this guy who was taking over for the chief just for the time being, and he basically came up with the character himself. And then I had him start writing his own parts, and then he did more of the writing, and we just worked well together.
He's a very shy guy, not the type of person that you necessarily feel comfortable going up to and being all bombastic, but okay, so like at first I thought he didn't really like me or didn't think I was funny or whatever, but then we got to the point that we did a few seasons together, or a couple of shows, and we did this one bit where my character was suffering from an intestinal problem, and he was going through some difficulties at the same time, like with regards to being overwhelmed as the new boss. And so Paragods went really well. Adam was awesome on it. And then after that, like I basically told him anytime he wanted to write anything for me or whatever, that I didn't really have a problem with doing anything he wanted me to do.
Adam's always that quiet guy on set. It's like, I just never knew what he was thinking. But from what I gather and from what he always says, he always had a good time. And anytime I have a chance to write, I include Adam.
There's been an explosion. It's a horrible thing. You have to call the fire department, call 911.
Right. Wait. We are 911. What do we do?
I don't know.
How does 911 call 911? Do you know what we're supposed to do? Well, this actually worked out quite nicely. It's been much too long since I've had a chance to do anything like this.
Yeah, but do you need to go somewhere after this?
No.
Then why are you wearing your uniform then?
Oh, well, I always wear this when I go out in public. I barely have any other clothes. As a member of the Space Squad, I always need to be on alert.
So we shot Space People 2 in the summer and fall of 2016. So the 5-year anniversary of Smoking Bottle Entertainment came during the production of Space People 2, and I can remember, I think it was the day after the anniversary of the day we started Dolchimok tapes, I was on set with a group of actors that included Colin Snyder and Ali Mattiotto, who had been in the Dolchimok tapes 5 years earlier. But you could just see how far we'd come. You know, we'd gone from just this group of 4 of us going through the woods with this, little camcorder to there was a much larger group. We were filming at a restaurant. We had a few extras just to be aliens in the background. Riven Girl was there doing everyone's makeup. It just felt like we had turned into such a larger outfit. I actually almost think we made more progress in those 5 years than in the 5 years since. With Space People 2, it just everything was bigger. With the first one, I deliberately set most of the story on Earth because I figured it would be so much easier than doing scenes in spaceships and space stations and asteroids and everything, but the scenes on the spaceships and the space battles and all that ended up being so much fun to do that Space People 2 has like 3 or 4 sequences where I'm cutting between different spaceships that are flying around and stuff. You know, with Space People 2, I was just trying to take everything to the next level. So like, in the first one, we did all those scenes where we walked around Boston. So in the script for the second one, I had us go to New York City and run around trying to find an alien base. And we considered actually taking a trip to New York and shooting those scenes, but it just ended up not being feasible. But I did end up taking a bus down to New York by myself for a day, got a ton of B-roll of every landmark that I could walk to, and then we got green screen footage, and I was almost thinking like, oh, I don't know, if it's just like green screen footage of us running around, I don't know if that'll look realistic. And then I just have to remind myself that like, our spaceship is a football wrapped in aluminum foil. This is not a movie where realism is something we're really that worried about. So one of the fun things about Space People 2 was that I got to play the villain in addition to the hero. The whole plot was based around me meeting my evil doppelganger from a parallel universe. The fight scene between my two selves was one of the most fun scenes to edit. And because parallel universes were involved in Space People 2, I did a bit of a Marvel Studios type thing and connected it to the Cartoon Man with Cosmic Ray coming in and giving us dimensional transponders, and then the second dimension makes an appearance, and just all the mechanics of interdimensional travel are the same as they were in the Cartoon Man films. So is there a big Infinity War crossover coming? Probably not, but it's fun to hint at one that might happen. Although Oswald Shozikian's glove does appear in every single Smoking Bottle film. So most of my films, when they were done, I would just have a screening at my house. I have a projector and a screen, so we have a pretty good home theater setup for small premieres of just the cast and a few guests. Revenge of the Animals and Space People obviously subsequently had festival showings, but Space People 2 was the first film that I actually did a theatrical premiere for. At that point, between the success of the first one and all the people involved, it was just, there was clearly enough interest in this film to justify premiering it in the theater. So I rented out a room at the Capitol Theater in Arlington, Massachusetts, and ended up having a bigger turnout than I was even expecting. I think a little over half the cast showed up, and a lot of people invited guests, and I think we had somewhere between like 35 and 40 people there, which was more than I was expecting. And it was just, I mean, so often it feels like there's not enough payoff to these films. You know, you go through all the trouble and then, you know, at the end it's just, oh, you know, you get together with 6 people and watch it at home. And even the first Space People, I had a lot of screenings of it, but like there was no one big screening. There were just a couple of smaller screenings at my house and then festival screenings that were all kind of at odd times. So there was never one that like everybody made it to. So Space People 2 was the one where I got to have the big premiere that I'd been dreaming of. And it was just one of those nights where I can just remember sitting there watching the movie, and as always, everyone was laughing and reacting at all the right moments and just thinking, savor this, because this is a high point. You know, it's gonna be a while before everything comes together this perfectly again. And I mean, that premiere was even more of a high point because while it was, you know, the culmination of the Space People saga, a group of us went out afterwards and started talking about what the next project was going to be. And the next project may have been the most ambitious one we attempted.